So the Ahsoka series wrapped a few weeks ago, and no, this isn't going to be a video explicitly on the Ahsoka show. This isn't a review of that show. I will talk about it, obviously, but that's not what this video is really about. If you want to know my full thoughts on Ahsoka, let me know, and maybe I'll make another video down the line. But what I want to talk about is something that came to mind a while ago. Now, if you saw my review of Tales of the Jedi, you know that I was working on a video saying, why is Disney so obsessed with Ahsoka? However, I kept putting that off, and then eventually it no longer became relevant. So I decided to just shelve that video. I thought maybe I'll do it another time, but for right now, that one's going to be put on the shelf. And now here it is, 2 years later. Actually, that's not true. It's a year later, and I'm finally doing the video because of the Ahsoka series. And the video is now different because it was originally, why is Disney so obsessed with Ahsoka? But it's not Disney, it's Dave Filoni. And the purpose of this video is explaining why Dave Filoni needs to let Ahsoka go. Now, if you're not in the know with Star Wars, at least not to the extent that I am, Ahsoka first made her appearance back in the 2008 Clone Wars film, which, if you don't know, was also Dave Filoni's first, not introduction into the Star Wars world, but his first project in Star Wars. Because, you know, he helped create and was basically the showrunner for the Clone Wars, and also directed the film that was basically the pilot. And so the two's backgrounds are kind of intertwined. He came into Star Wars the same time Ahsoka did. So you understand why this character means so much to him. And Ahsoka was not very well liked upon her first introduction in the Clone Wars. Even though I liked her because obviously I was a kid. I was 5 when that movie came out. Good lord. And I've watched every episode of the show. And I watched it back when it was running between 2008 and 2014. But here's the thing. She left the Jedi Order at the end of Season 5 because it was a way around keeping her alive, yet not having her be around when Order 66 happened, so she couldn't intervene with Anakin and Darth Vader and all that other stuff. However, George Lucas wanted her to die before Order 66, so that would explain why she wasn't around to help Anakin return from being Darth Vader, which made a lot of sense, but Filoni found a workaround and had her leave the Jedi Order. And it should have been left at that. That should have been her last appearance. But then, in the Season 1 finale of Star Wars Rebels, she made a surprise appearance, where she was part of a larger rebellion that was unknown to the small rebel cell that we'd been following for the entire season. And this was quite the pleasant surprise to me. I liked the character of Ahsoka, so it was cool seeing her back in Rebels. And she had some of the best scenes in Season 2 of Rebels. Her finding out that Anakin is Darth Vader by sensing him through the Force, and then throughout the entire season, basically being in denial about it being her master, until she hears Matt Lanter's Anakin's voice through the mask after she slices it in half. Which, again, yes, was ripped off in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but I already did a 30-minute rant about why that show is hot trash. And then that episode was basically her last episode, her refusing to leave her master again, and even willing to die trying to bring him back to the light side. Even though they pretty much gave away at the end of the episode that she was alive, and that's kind of where everything falls apart for this character. Because she was literally saved from death in the stupid World Between Worlds thing. I like Rebels, but something like that was just really stupid. I don't understand the point of that. And I get that it was part of Ezra's arc, but I feel like it could have been handled better, and especially without basically saving someone from dying. That was pretty dumb. And basically it tells us that Anakin could have saved Padme, but I guess he just wasn't ready to see the world between worlds, and trust me, we'll get back to that in a little bit. Then she's been appearing also, before I get into that, there was also Season 7 of Clone Wars. I almost forgot. Now, I found this season extremely pointless, because not only did the first 8 episodes add nothing to the story, the last arc was pretty good, but it also contradicted Ahsoka being in Order 66, because now she knows something she could sense what was happening between Anakin and Palpatine, and yet she and Rex just decided to go into hiding instead of trying to find out what happened. And again, people really loved the last Clone Wars arc. I still thought it was good, but it came after 4 mediocre episodes and 4 absolute shit episodes, and it kind of just screwed with everything. Then we have the so-called Mando-verse, because God forbid something doesn't become a goddamn cinematic universe. And honestly, the whole Mando cinematic universe thing that they try to do, honestly does a worse job at world building than the Legends did, where it was so many different people writing and making so many different stories, yet there was always a way to connect it into canon. Even as something as over the top as Force Unleashed was still able to find a way to be canon. But they can't even get these small, really cheaply made stories to connect without a bunch of continuity errors or fucking up the original trilogy. For example, Ahsoka being around. Now, this is also a problem I had with the finale of Star Wars Rebels, where it was revealed that she was still around at the end of Return of the Jedi, yet decided to just not help Luke save Anakin. What a dick. And then it gets even worse when she shows up in Mandalorian Season 2, and honestly, it's kind of pointless. She's just there to send him on a journey to find a Jedi to train. She just happens to be one that he found until Luke showed up. Honestly, you could cut the episode with Ahsoka and not miss a thing. The only bit of information we learned from the Ahsoka episode is, 1, that she's still tracking down Thrawn to try to find Ezra, and 2, that the little puppet thing is named Grogu. That's it. Honestly, if you could have altered that episode, and the first episode of the Ahsoka show could have been her storyline in that episode. But then it gets worse with the Book of Boba Fett, where she shows up again, for no reason, might I add. She doesn't do shit. But she shows up for a conversation with Luke, and what would have been so much cooler is seeing her first interaction with Luke. Her telling him stories about his father in his prime during the Clone Wars. Or maybe Luke telling her how he returned to the light side of the Force to save his son. Imagine Ahsoka's reaction to finding out that he didn't die as this horrible Dark Lord of the Sith that committed countless atrocities throughout the galaxy, but he returned to being the good man that she knew for several years in order to save his son, and in tandem, saving the galaxy. Imagine how she'd react to that. Imagine Luke hearing stories about him in the Clone Wars. Imagine Leia hearing stories about him in the Clone Wars, because in the original Legends canon, Anakin appeared to Leia as a Force ghost only once, and he was there to ask for forgiveness and everything for what he had done. And Leia refused to forgive him, even though he straight up said that she probably would never be able to see him again. And that is actually what happened. But after she heard stories about the young boy on Tatooine, how he was such a nice person, and how he inspired the people with getting himself free from slavery in the pod race, she came to forgive her father. Imagine doing something like that, but hearing his heroics during the Clone Wars, or even before the Clone Wars. Imagine how she'd react to that. But we don't get any of that because the stupid Mandalorian shows don't care about character. They care about jangling keys in front of you. And you know what, fuck, it's not just the Mando ones. Obi-Wan Kenobi had the same problem. And it's hard to watch. And the conversation between her and Luke is fucking pointless. But then, there's the Ahsoka show. Now, I might do a video sometime just talking about the Mando-verse, because all of it's bad. I reviewed Book of Boba Fett, and it was bad. Ahsoka was obviously bad. Mandalorian Season 3 was absolute trash as well. So I might do that sometime down the road. Let me know if you want me to do that. But this is the point where it really showed that Dave Filoni needs to let go of Ahsoka. Oh, you know what? I forgot about Tales of the Jedi. This was the point. No, this was the breaking point for me. Because she showed up in Rebels. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. Then she came back in Season 7 of the Clone Wars. Okay, obviously, you kind of have to have her here. But when she was revived in Rebels early, I'm like, okay, that's a cop-out, but whatever. She showed him in Mandalorian. I'm like, okay, cool. This is a decent idea, even if it doesn't amount to much. Then she showed him in Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, okay, we don't need to see her in every single show. Then Tales of the Jedi happened, and he apparently felt the need to show us her birth. He dedicated an entire episode to seeing Ahsoka's birth and her connecting with some giant tiger creature. Because that was a necessary 15 minutes of my life. And then he shoved in 2 more episodes about Ahsoka that weren't very good. One of her just training that very loosely tied into Order 66, but not really. And then the final episode was her pulling the Obi-Wan Kenobi route of hiding, just doing menial farming. And she accidentally reveals herself, and then she gets a shitty fight with an Inquisitor. What was the point of this? I guess it was to set up her joining the rebellion, but you didn't need this. She heard about the rebellion and decided she was done hiding and wanted to go do something about it. You don't need to show this. It's implied. And honestly, the opposite effect happened with the Ahsoka show because there's so much missing gaps. What was she doing between Rebels Season 4 and this show? Why wasn't she helping Luke? Why isn't she helping the New Republic rebuild after the atrocities of the Empire? Why is she letting the New Republic become just as corrupt as the Empire? We never find this out. And side note, I might also do another video of how Ahsoka just completely botched every single Rebels character. But that's neither here nor there. This show is awful, and it serves no purpose, because you know what? All that happens in this is that Thrawn and Ezra escape where they're at. Honestly, a much better show would have been one focused on Ezra and Thrawn. Maybe we find them playing a game of cat and mouse on this whatever planet they're on, like Thrawn trying to track Ezra down, or maybe Ezra trying to track Thrawn down, or maybe they're trying to track each other down, or maybe they realize the circumstances and have to team up to escape where they're at, or something like that. Or Thrawn's backstory is mostly, he's not just some power-hungry douchebag. He wants to save his planet and his people and everything, and basically the only way he was going to do that was by helping Palpatine. He didn't give a shit who ruled the galaxy as long as he was able to protect his people. Imagine him explaining this to Ezra, or maybe Ezra finding this out, and maybe redeeming Thrawn, or something like that. Something more interesting than what we got, because Thrawn is no different. Ezra's no different. Everybody's no different, except for the fact that nobody wants to emote in this show. Ahsoka doesn't want to emote. Hera, Sabine, nobody has any emotions in this show. So I'm going to say this right now, Ahsoka should have died in Season 2 of Rebels. That was such a good ending for her character, but Dave Filoni refused to let her die. I get it, it was his first character, it was his baby, even if George Lucas did kind of create her and even gave her her name. It's Dave's character, and you don't want to let that go, but if you're going to create a character, you have to be willing to let them go. And Dave Filoni is not willing to do that, and I'm done seeing Ahsoka. I hope the show doesn't get a Season 2, and I never want to see this character again. So, that's all I got, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.